Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voices in Health and Wellness, the podcast where we speak with leaders who are reimagining how care is delivered, experienced, and sustained. Today's guest is someone who's doing deep, meaningful, impactful work at the intersection of addiction recovery, mental health, and community care. I'm thrilled to welcome Tim Massaquoi, Executive Director of Kensington Health and Community Recovery Centre, a Toronto-based organisation offering trauma-informed, person-centred care for individuals navigating substance misuse and mental health challenges. KHCRC is part of a growing wave of services bridging clinical recovery with lived experience and wraparound community support. And today we'll support how Tim and his team are building that model from the ground up. So Tim, a very warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Greenland. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here today.
Wonderful. Maybe we could start a little bit at the top. Could you talk a little bit about your journey in terms of how you've ended up doing what you do and perhaps what inspired you to get involved in this kind of work?
Yeah, thank you. So my journey began at the end of my previous career. So my previous career out of college, I went to the University of Michigan and I played American football. And so, I was able to, fortunately get drafted into the NFL and begin my career as an NFL, professional football player. 2 years into my career, my third year, I suffered a devastating knee injury that, completely ended my career. And so I'm in my mid-20s and, I can't do the thing that I love to do. I was passionate to do. I've been doing for maybe 15 years, since I was 10 years old playing football, and I couldn't do that anymore. And so a big part of my identity came into question as far as my purpose, my, my value, things like that. And it really, really took a toll on me. And so at that point I sought help. And while I was looking for a therapist, a psychotherapist in particular, I was looking for a Black male psychotherapist who was also a former pro athlete. And in my journey now, I've been told that, and even at the time, I was like, we don't have a lot of those type of psychotherapists available. And so fortunately, I was able to find someone who had worked with pro athletes previously as a female therapist, nonetheless, however. And I was really able to get the help that I needed. And so at that time, I decided to be what I wanted at the time I needed help. And so I went back to school, got my master's in counseling psychology. And then I got licensed as a psychotherapist once I completed my coursework there. And I began my practice. I began my practice specifically and intentionally to work with other pro athletes. And it was interesting because there's a process for even working with pro athletes. And so while I was going through that process, I decided to just work with the community, just to provide services to the community, whoever was looking for services. And that's really began my journey into the world of mental health and wellness.
Thank you. Always interesting to hear about the journey because people have such different paths into how they get to where they are. And often there's a very personal element to it, which kind of guides where they go. So thank you for sharing that. So you are, I believe, you have an executive director role at the moment. So what does a typical week look like for you at the KHCRC in that space?
Yeah, so at KHCRC, we work in Southwest Philadelphia in the U.S., and we support victims of gun violence. Specifically, we experienced in Southwest Philadelphia an incident of mass violence. A gunman in 2023 shot 9 people and killed 5 of those individuals. And so our goal and our mission is to support that community, support those families and that community in their healing journey. And so a typical day for me, it's really about supporting my team, just checking in with them, making sure that, they have what they need to support our clients or our participants rather. And then also finding more resources, right? When you do this work, resources are always a need, and the need is always high. And so, finding more collaborations, partnerships with folks who do other work to support communities such as food, housing insecurity, and making connections to mental health services, for individual psychotherapy. So we're really just about, our work is twofold. We focus on those community members who are impacted by that shooting, and then we provide community mental health and wellness services to the larger Southwest Philadelphia community. And so we're constantly engaging, looking for new partnerships, looking for interventions that are really effective and culturally responsive to our community. And so for me, it's just making connections, building relationships, and supporting my team in the excellent work that they do.
Interesting. I guess you've been doing this work for some time. And how has your approach to leadership changed since you've taken on this role?
It's interesting. My approach to leadership really has transformed since my first leadership job about 15 years ago, about 12 years ago. I used to run a youth shelter for runaway homeless youth. And that work was so dynamic because we were actually taking care of kids and we were their responsible parental figures while they were with us. And so there's a lot of trauma in that work, a lot of vicarious trauma and tertiary trauma. And so for me, I really had to learn how to, because again, I told you I'm a football player, and we're what's the mission? What's the championship? What's the plan? Keep our head down and really just grind to that, success or that, goal that we have. However, as a leader, I had to understand the impact of being directly exposed to trauma and that secondary trauma with my staff. I noticed some behaviors that were in response to that trauma that were kind of negative. So we had to really be reflective and be more of a space that was empathetic towards not just only the children, but also the staff and the team that was working with them, because they were just exposed to a lot of trauma. And so for me, my leadership had to shift from this kind of mission driven only to mission driven and supportive, and also being a servant leader. That was something that really I had to learn how to do, in that I was not just focusing on the clients or the participants, the kids, but I was also focusing on the health and well-being of my team. And so that was a learning process for me. And so now in my current position, that is the same kind of approach I have of a servant leader and also a conscious leader, in that, my decisions, the things I say, the strategies, the mission, is it really supportive of the holistic of my organization, right? My team, the community, the participants in the community. I had to shift and really consider what I'm trying to accomplish and making sure that all stakeholders are impacted positively by any action that we would pursue.
And with that, what do you find most energizing about the work that you do?
Just breakthroughs, just my team. I have an awesome team. We're small. We're a team of 3, but we're small and mighty, and we're really connected to the work. The passion that my team has for the community members who have been impacted by this trauma, and their energy to, when we come into work every day, we're trying to figure out how to get resources to a participant. We are celebrating our wins. I tell corny, really bad dad jokes to start our staff meetings, and they're just so embarrassed by it, but it's fun. We try to, because the work is heavy. And so we have to make sure we are always incorporating light moments and moments where we can celebrate our successes. So that's something that I really, really enjoy in my current position with my team, and just, and also supporting the participants and their appreciation for us just being alongside them as they navigate this new world of working through that post-traumatic stress disorder, working through the loss of a loved one, just being with them day by day and seeing, the ebbs and flows of that. But the idea that they appreciate us because we're alongside them, that's really satisfying for me, I would say.
And you mentioned there the work is heavy, and I completely get that. So what are the most depleting parts of your work, and how do you protect you and your team from that? I mean, you mentioned about the humor and the staff meetings, but what else do you do to kind of keep the energy up and stop people getting dragged down by the heaviness of the work?
Yeah, just having a level of compassion that is, I won't call it unorthodox, but it's not a norm, right? So just understanding that while my team and I are doing this work, life is still happening. We call it life is lifing, right? So, dentist appointments to the kids, car issues, other things as far as like, other priorities, really just balancing being empathetic and giving them flexibility, right? And working from home a couple of days a week. All those things are important when you're considering not just, being a space where it's only about the work, but it's about, the whole person as far as our team and even myself and our participants, just making sure that we're able to be flexible and having a lot of compassion for when people are going through difficult things. And again, just celebrating them, creating moments to celebrate their successes, the clients and the team when they're able to help a client, and just being able to create an environment that's light as much as possible, because we are dealing with some heavy things. We are dealing with loss. We are dealing with grief. We're dealing with a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. And so with that, you have those very high and strong emotions that comes along with it. So we're just trying to create an environment where we can balance that with humor and support, and then also constantly checking in with my team to make sure they're in a good space.
Thank you. You've been in the space for a while, and I guess you've seen some major shifts or not. But what are the things you're noticing, particularly around mental health, addiction recovery, trauma, community-based care, in your experience?
I think I think some of the modalities that have been historically only driven towards, I would say, those who are more affluent, right? Those who have more resources. I think the shift in our communities from not just, providing clinical psychotherapy to also having holistic wellness interventions available to communities that have not had that. I think that's a real big shift. What I mean by that is the ability to, teach community members around mindfulness, teach community members about, sound bowl therapy, movement therapy, journaling. We are in this 2026, we're going to start to do what we call ecotherapy or nature-based therapy. So different modalities, and then also play, right? We have a line dancing class where we teach community members how to line dance, create these kind of environments where it's not so clinical. The clinical is there, but also creating environments and opportunities for folks to heal in community, because a lot of our community-based work is driven by having community members participate collectively. And it's not as, I would say, clinically driven. It's more so about engaging them in their own environment, in natural communal spaces, and then bringing healing modalities there. I think that's something that has been shifting, I would say, since the pandemic, actually. So that's something which is a great thing, because these modalities provide therapeutic support without having that clinical approach, because not everybody wants to or needs to have a clinical approach. If a clinical approach is there and that need is there, we can fulfill that as well. But having both for these communities, I think that's been a real game changer in the mental health and wellness space for sure.
Brilliant. I mean, what was it that you were seeing that made you think you needed to put these things in? I'm just trying to work out what it was that you were seeing in the people that you served that thought, well, actually, these people could benefit from some of the things you've talked about.
Yeah, I would say that one of the main things is when, community members in these communities go through traumatic experiences like gun violence or just violence in nature or loss, just this kind of isolation, right? This kind of like, I'll handle it on my own. I'll do it on my own. Nobody's going to help me, so I'll figure it out. I think what we were seeing is that, and then also the resistance to clinical approaches to therapy, that kind of stigma has always been there, especially in communities of color. I think what I was seeing was like, how can we bring these services to these communities that they're very hesitant and resistant, and trust is not something that can be built right away, but over time. So we had to create these modalities that were, not as technically driven, but more so kind of, hey, we're going to do this community thing. We're going to heal in community. We're going to provide, these spaces for you to come, as safe spaces for you to come and experience these healing modalities. And also giving folks the language and the tools to now have ownership in their own healing modality, their own healing journey. I think that was something that for me, I saw that we wanted to, we want these folks to get the services they need as far as therapy, but it doesn't have to be this clinical approach. And for me, that was something that was like, it was very important to create options, right? Giving folks options, and options is great for agency, right? When you have agency, meaning that you can kind of choose what you want to engage with, it gives you more incentive to complete that thing because you have chosen it and it wasn't prescribed to you. And so that was something that for our services and our approach, I wanted to have community members feel like they own their own therapeutic journey, and that, they weren't just pushed into one modality as far as, traditional psychotherapy like CBT or, some type of other modality like that. I wanted folks to really feel like, this feels well. I like this. And so I want to try this intervention or this modality. And that was something that it was really important to have folks feel like they had ownership in their journey for us.
Thank you. And do you think the shifts that you've seen both in the clients that you serve and the way that you've aligned your services is specific to your local context in Toronto, or do you think this is a more systemic thing, more generally?
I think it's more so, and so we're in Philadelphia, but I do think it's more. I think especially for urban communities of color, I think the shift is happening all over in the U.S. I would say, I think from what I've seen, the shift is happening across the country for communities of color because, again, there is a village, there is a community component that's really important, right? The healing modality can be individualistic, but this collective healing is something that, we're seeing that more folks are moving towards. And these nature-based or natural or non-traditional clinical approaches to therapy is something that I think is starting to be, more accessible. Doing things like, wellness activities like yoga, meditation. Traditionally, these communities would not have access to it, but now you're seeing they're a part of service offerings. And I think that's something that's really important because there's, again, collectively community members are having access to these things and are able to try what they want to try, pick what they want to pick, and not be prescribed a certain approach. So I think that is a movement across, and again, I think the pandemic, there was a real big emphasis on wellness, especially when we're all isolated and looking for connection online, right? Big groups, new different ways to connect online. I feel like it has carried over now 5 years later into this can be a thing we can use in communities across our country.
You're obviously very innovative with what you've done in introducing these things. Do you think everybody else is a bit behind the curve?
No, not necessarily behind the curve. I think just the mindsets and ideas of who these things are for, right? I think that is shifting. I think these things and these approaches are now seen as more accessible for everyone, right? I think that's been the major shift. Is that I would say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, in Southwest Philadelphia, middle school kids weren't doing yoga, in their after school program. Like our center, we provide yoga after school to help decompress, to help kids release that energy. That wasn't happening 10, 15 years ago. So I think the openness in communities to these different healing modalities has been something that has been encouraging, and folks are starting to get it because of that kind of push to clinical, push to psychotherapy, push to individual, or everything being clinical, and access as far as I think a couple of things affected, actually, now that we're talking about it. I think access to clinicians that were diverse in ethnicity, background, experiences. I think that has increased. So more folks are coming into the space of clinical, or coming into the space of mental health and wellness that weren't there before. There was usually a traditional, Western European, approach, or those clinicians, majority were, quite honestly, white females and maybe a couple of white males as far as who were clinicians and psychotherapists and psychologists. But we're seeing a more expansive view of folks who are coming into the space that are more diverse. And so with that, now communities are coming alongside that diversity, and those communities are now experiencing those modalities because there are folks who are facilitating or folks who are trained therapists who are bringing those modalities, who look like them, who come from the same neighborhoods like them. And so when you have that, it's instant. There's a connection because certain things don't have to be explained. That's why I was looking for, in my past, I was looking for a Black male therapist who had a background in sports, because I didn't want to have to explain certain things because they just got it. And when you have that therapeutic alliance happens much quicker than when you're trying to figure each other out.
Thank you. You obviously tried lots of different approaches. Could you say pick your top 2 or 3 that you would perhaps like to see other organizations exploring if they've got limited time and resources to implement things? What would be the things you would like to see them do first based on the results and success that you've had?
I would say the number one thing I would like to see is more mindfulness practices in different spaces. I benefited for the past 7 years from mindfulness. And in so many ways in my life, and it's impacted my personal life, it's impacted my professional life, it's impacted my sense of purpose. I would love to see more mindfulness practices across the board. I would love to see these more nature-based healing modalities, more kind of non-traditional opportunities for folks to experience healing and things in different ways. I would love to see more of that, but I would say mindfulness. I would like to, from a clinical perspective, I would love to see more emphasis on dialectic behavior therapy, this duality of life, right? I would love to see that because that's a reality that a lot of us, we live in the gray. I got a gray shirt on today. We live in the gray. Things are not always black and white, either or. Life has a lot of both and. So I would love to see those things. And then really more encouragement for agency, like giving folks the tools they need to own their own wellness journey, but just coming alongside them. I think there's something that's really, really, really beneficial when you can now embark on a journey towards healing or wellness, and then you just have somebody supporting you and checking in, but not just directing you one way. I would love to see more of those kind of experiences for communities around in the US and around the world, quite honestly.
Thank you. You talked a lot about the things that are working really well for you in your model. What's more challenging to work with at the moment? Are there any particular things that are bottlenecks or frustrating, or things that you're still trying to overcome in the work that you do?
While all this being said, just, there are still community members who are resistant to some of these services, and also resources are, financial resources to do the work, to create environments where folks are really engaged in the work. That's always a strain. So I would like to see more resources into this space. I know from a work, across industries, from a work perspective, more organizations are including these wellness opportunities and resources, whether it's, mindfulness, whether it's an EAP opportunity to see a therapist that's outside of the, normal human resources. I think that's been a move, but there's still a gap. And so I think that gap can be filled with more resources that emphasize wellness. And then with that being said, also community growth, community health and wellness, more kind of communal opportunities to experience these different modalities. I would love to see more of that. And because the more you see it, the more it becomes a norm. And the more, especially communities who are impacted by gun violence or violence or poverty, I think those healing modalities can really help folks overcome a lot of trauma.
Thank you. And you talked about resources and funding being one of the challenges. Are there any other gaps around sort of people or processes or partnerships that you?
Partnerships is huge for us. We cannot do the work without partnerships. So our we have a couple of partners that we work with to provide food resources. We just did a coat drive with another partner this past Saturday to get ready for the winter here. So partnerships are really important. I would love to. Years ago, when I worked in child welfare, youth services, there was a grant opportunity where about 6 organizations came together and was able to support a young person through, from who ran away and now we're housing secure. So we supported them with housing, medical, education, job, mental health. So I would love to see more of that kind of collaborative work around, supporting folks in their mental health and wellness. I think those are really, really great ways to address resource issues when if I take my part, you take your part, but we're all working in unison. We're all working to collaborate and support people in their journey. I think that's an excellent thing that, needs to be increased across the board when you're talking about serving others or social services. There needs to be more collaboration, more connection, and more kind of like, multidisciplinary teams, right? But not necessarily law as in the traditional sense, but more kind of mental health and wellness services from an NDT perspective. That can only help folks no matter, who's going through what, because we know that when somebody goes through something in our communities, it's not just the idea that they survived a shooting or it was a shooting, but it's also poverty. There's systematic issues of oppression. There's lack of housing. There's job insecurity. So if we can figure out a way to help folks more collectively, I think that's nothing but positives can come from that.
Thank you. Obviously, you are running a business.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of recurring operational bottlenecks that you've just had to learn to live with over time? Obviously, funding aside, because I know that's a big thing, but just the real nitty gritty of what you will do day to day.
No, not necessarily. I think we've, of course, we will love more technology, and we're using technology as much as appropriate as possible. But beyond, I would say funding is the main thing. Resources in our communities is another thing that we just try to work around, again, through those partnerships. But I can't see nothing much else. We are just trying to be supportive as much as possible to our community members, to our participants, and we just work through things. I can't identify anything because there probably are things that we've been able to work through where they're not an issue anymore. The main thing is participant engagement, getting the word out to our communities, to let them know what we offer, who we are, what we do, and our intention and purpose. We door knock. We put door hangers on a door just to say, hey, this is who we are. Scan the QR code and connect with us. So just really being innovative. We've kind of had to have that mindset, and that has really helped us do the work that we need to do. So I would just say, really, it's just more resources for the community. That's probably the main thing.
Got it. I guess you're very interested in feedback. What feedback do you hear most often from your clients or frontline staff?
They from the staff is, again, I don't want to say the same thing over and over again, but more resources, and meeting diverse needs too, right? So when we think about funding for community or social services, they're usually very limited in nature. But people are complex. People are not, these are, you have your basic needs, but people are very complex. And so more of the ability to do different things to help people, I think that's really important. Just, considering the whole person, the whole community, what needs are present, what needs are non-traditional. I would like to see more funders create more flexibility in what they fund and what they will and won't support, because again, folks are very complicated. Folks are very diverse. Needs change often. They're not just the same needs, and being able to help them and meet those needs is what's going to help, certain communities progress in a healthy way.
Thank you. Let's say the KHCRC had a sudden influx of clients or funding next week. What will be the first thing that will break or you would need to scale?
Our space. We're in a small space now, just our space. Our space, I would say one of the things we want to do with our work, as our program it's we're in year 2, so we're pretty young, is to see our growth and development, and also to see if our work can be done in other communities beyond ours. That's something we really want to do, because we feel like the work that we're doing is not just needed in our part of Philadelphia, but it's needed in different, states, different counties, different regions. And so seeing our work and being able to expand it, hopefully in the future, that's something that we really would like to see for our clients. Again, it's just more diversity in resources and what we can help them with. That would be something that would be great. Say, hey, we can help you, with housing. We can help you, whatever it might be, with transportation, whatever it might be. We can help you with those things, and you don't have to go to another resource because we're connected here. So that collaborative effort of these different service providers that comes into a space, really to create a network and a hub so we can support the whole person, that will be idealistic for us and for me, for sure.
Amazing. And if you've been on quite a journey with this organization, but if you were starting KHCRC from scratch, would you do anything differently?
I wouldn't. The way we started, so we started about 2 years ago after our major incident. I was hired about a year ago. And the first thing I did was put a team together. And within 4 months of my hire, my team was up and running. And within 2 weeks of their hire, my team was communicating and connecting with families. So we got to our families first, and we didn't even have a physical space yet in the community. We were sharing a space with our fiscal sponsor, but my team just went to work and they focused on our families. And so I wouldn't change anything different. If anything, I would have liked to start sooner, right after the event. But, that's it. It took a lot for us to get going in the first place, but I wouldn't do anything differently. I think the team that I was able to, bring together just did an excellent job, and we're growing, right? We're growing. We're starting to be more welcomed by the community. Folks are starting to access our services. So things are really going well. So I wouldn't change anything. I think the way we started was how we had to start, given the circumstances.
Brilliant. And where would you like to be in the next 6 to 12 months? You've talked about some aspiration for growth, more funding, more space, but where would you like to see the KHCRC in a year's time?
So in 6 months to a year, 6 months to a year from now, I would love to see us financially stable. I would love to see our families that we're serving in a better space from their mental health and wellness perspective, and in other parts of life too. And I would like to see us expanding and serving more communities around our area. Because I feel like we can do it. I feel like, we can, bring more folks to our team and just really now work with our city, with the police department, with the social services. I would love to see us integrated into the larger Philadelphia community as well, with an emphasis on community mental health and wellness.
On that note, Tim, I'd like to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been such an interesting conversation, hearing about your journey, your inspiration, what you've done to help serve your local community, where you're looking to take things going forward. It's been really very insightful. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Greenland, for having me on. I appreciate it.